Wings of Fire, an autobiography, APJ Abdul Kalam with Arun Tiwari. Propitiation. The launch of the IGMDP was like a bright flash on the Indian scientific firmament. Missile technology had been considered the domain of a few selected nations in the world. People were curious to see how, with what India had that point of time, we were going to achieve all that was promised. The magnitude of the IGMDP was really unprecedented in the country, and the schedules projected were quite quixotic by the norms and standards prevailing in the Indian R&D establishments. I was fully aware that obtaining sanction for the program could at best be seen as only 10% of the work done. To get it going would be quite a different matter altogether. The more you have, the more there is to maintain. Now that we had been given all the necessary money and freedom to proceed, I had to take my team forward and fulfill the promises I had made. What would be needed to realize this missile program from the design to the deployment stages? Excellent manpower was available, money had been sanctioned, and some infrastructure also existed. What was lacking then? What else does a project need to succeed apart from these three vital inputs? From my SLV3 experience, I thought I knew the answer. The crux was going to be our mastery over missile technology. I expected nothing from abroad. Technology is a group activity, and we would need leaders who could not only put their heart and soul into the missile program, but also carry along with them hundreds of other engineers and scientists. We knew we had to be prepared to encounter numerous contradictions and procedural absurdities that were prevalent in the participating laboratories. We would have to counteract the existing attitudes of our public sector units, which believed that their performance would never be tested. The whole system, its people, procedures, infrastructure, would have to learn to extend itself. We decided to achieve something that was way beyond our collective national capability, and I, for one, had no illusions about the fact that unless our teams worked on the basis of proportion or probability, nothing would be achieved. The most remarkable thing about DRDL was its large pool of highly talented people, many of whom were unfortunately full of egotism and rebelliousness. Unfortunately, they had not even accumulated enough experience to make them confident about their own judgment. On the whole, they would discuss matters very enthusiastically, but would finally accept what a select few said. They would unquestioningly believe in outside specialists. A particularly interesting person I met in DRDL was A.V. Ranga Rao. He was very articulate and had impressive personality. His usual garb consisted of a red necktie with a checked coat and loose trousers. He would wear this in the hot climate of Hyderabad, where even a long-sleeved shirt and shoes are considered an avoidable inconvenience. With his thick white beard and a pipe clamped between his teeth, there was a certain aura around this extremely gifted, but rather egocentric individual. I consulted Ranga Rao on revamping the existing management system to achieve an optimum utilization of human resources. Ranga Rao had a series of meetings with the scientists, sharing our vision of developing indigenous missile technology and explaining the different aspects of the IGMDP. After prolonged discussions, we decided to reorganize the laboratory into a technology-oriented structure. We needed to accommodate a matrix type of structure for the execution of various activities needed for the projects. In less than 4 months, 400 scientists began to work on the missile program. During this period, the most important task before me was the selection of the project directors to lead individual missile projects. We had a very large pool of talent. In fact, it was a market of plenty. The question was whom to pick: a go-getter, a planner, a maverick, a dictator, or a team man. I had to get the right type of leader who could clearly visualize the goal and channelize the energies of his team members who would be working at different work centers in pursuit of their own individual goals. It was a difficult game, some rules of which I had learnt while working on ISRO's high priority projects for 2 decades. The wrong choice would jeopardize the entire future of the program. I had a detailed discussion with a large number of prospective scientists and engineers. I wanted these 5 project directors to train another 25 project directors and team leaders of tomorrow. Many of my senior colleagues naming them would be unfair because it could be only my imagination tried to befriend me during this period. I respected their concern for a lonely man but avoided any close contacts. Through loyalty to a friend, one can be easily led into doing something that is not in the best interest of the organization. Perhaps the main motive behind my isolation was my desire to escape from the demands of relationships, which I consider very difficult in comparison to making rockets. All I desired was to be true to my way of life, to uphold the signs of rocketry in my country, and to retire with a clean conscience. I took quite some time and did a lot of hard thinking to decide who should lead the 5 projects. I examined the working styles of many scientists before making my decision. I think some of my observations may interest you. A basic aspect of a person's working style is how he plans and organizes tasks. At one extreme is the cautious planner who carefully spells out each step before making any move. With a sharp eye for what can possibly go wrong, he tries to cover all contingencies. At the other end is the fast mover who weaves and dodges without a plan. Inspired by an idea, the fast mover is always ready for action. Another aspect of a person's working style is control, the energy and attention devoted to ensuring that things happen in a certain way. At one extreme is the tight controller, a strict administrator with frequent checkpoints. Rules and policies are to be followed with religious fervor. At the opposite end are those who move with freedom and flexibility. They have little patience for bureaucracy. They delegate easily and give their subordinates wide latitude for movement. I wanted leaders who tread the middle path, those who could control without stifling dissent or being rigid. I wanted men who had the capability to grow with possibilities, with the patience to explore all possible alternatives, with the wisdom to apply old principles to new situations, people with the skill to negotiate their way forward. I wanted them to be accommodating, to be willing to share their power with others and work in teams, delegating good jobs, assimilating fresh opinions, respecting intelligent people, and listening to wise counsel. They would have to be able to sort out things amicably and take responsibility for slip ups. Above all, they should be able to take failure in their stride and share in both success and failure. My search for someone to lead the Prithvi project ended with Colonel V.J. Sundaram, who belonged to the EME Corps of the Indian Army. With a postgraduate degree in aeronautical engineering and expertise in mechanical vibrations, Sundaram was head of the structurers group at DRDL. I found in him a readiness to experiment with new ways of resolving conflicting points of view. He was an experimenter and innovator in teamwork. He had an extraordinary capability for evaluating alternative ways of operating. He would suggest moving forward into new terrains that could lead to a solution which had not been perceived earlier. Though a particular goal might be clear to a project leader and he may be capable of giving adequate directions for accomplishing it, there can be resistance from subordinates if the goal makes no sense to them. Therein lies the importance of a leader who provides effective work directions. I thought the project director of Prithvi would be the first to make decisions with production agencies and the armed forces, and Sundaram would be the ideal choice to see that sound decisions were taken. For Trishul, I was looking for a man who had not only had a sound knowledge of electronics and missile warfare, but who could also communicate the complexities to his team in order to promote understanding and to earn his team's support. I found in Commodore S.R. Mohan, who sailed in Defense R&D from the Indian Navy, a talent for detail and an almost magical power of persuasion. For Agni, my dream project, I needed somebody who would tolerate my occasional meddling in the running of this project. R.N. Agarwal, I found the right person. He was an alumnus of MIT with a brilliant academic record and had been managing the aeronautical test facilities at DRDL with keen professional acumen. Due to technological complexities, Akash and Nag were then considered missiles of the future. Their activities were expected to peak about half a decade later. Therefore, I selected the relatively young Prahalada and N.R. Iyer for Akash and Nag. Two other young men, V.K. Saraswat and A.K. Kapoor, were made deputies to Sundaram and Mohan respectively. In those days, there was no forum in DRDL where issues of general importance could be openly discussed and decisions debated. Scientists, it must be remembered, are basically emotional people. Once they stumble, it is difficult for them to pull themselves together. Setbacks and disappointments have always been and always will be an inherent part of any career, even one in science. However, I did not want any of my scientists to face disappointments alone. I also wanted to ensure that none of them set their goals when they were at low ebb. To avoid such eventualities, a science council was created, a sort of panchayat where the community would sit together and take common decisions. Every 3 months, all scientists, juniors and seniors, veterans and freshers would sit together and let off steam. The very first meeting of the council was eventful. After a spell of half-hearted inquiries and expressions of doubt, one senior scientist, M. N. Rao, shot a straight question. On what basis did you select these 5 Pandavas? He meant the project directors. I was in fact expecting this question. I wanted to tell him that I found all these 5 Pandavas married to the Draupadi of positive thinking. Instead, I told Rao to wait and see. I had chosen them to take charge of a long-term program where new storms would arise every day. Every tomorrow, I told Rao, will give opportunities to these enthusiastic people, the Agarwals, Prahaladas, Iyers, and Saraswats, to gain a fresh perspective on their goals and a strong hold on their commitments. What makes a productive leader? In my opinion, a productive leader must be very competent in staffing. He should continually introduce new blood into the organization. He must be adept at dealing with problems and new concepts. The problems encountered by an R&D organization typically involve trade-offs among a wide variety of known and unknown parameters. Skill in handling these complex entities is important in achieving high productivity. The leader must be capable of instilling enthusiasm in his team. He should give appropriate credit where it is due, praise publicly but criticize privately. One of the most difficult questions came from a young scientist. How are you going to stop these projects from going the devil way? I explained to him the philosophy behind IGMDP. It begins with design and ends in deployment. The participation of the production centers and user agencies right from the design stage had been ensured, and there was no question of going back till the missile systems had been successfully deployed in the battlefield. While the process of forming teams and organizing work was going on, I found that space available at DRDL was grossly inadequate to meet the enhanced requirements of IGMDP. Some of the facilities would have to be located at a nearby site. The missile integration and checkout facility built during the Devil phase consisted only of a 120 square meter shed thickly populated with pigeons. Where was the space and the facility to integrate the 5 missiles which would arrive here shortly? Environmental test facility and the avionics laboratory were equally cramped and ill-equipped. I visited the nearby Imarat Kancha area. It used to be the test range for anti-tank missiles developed by DRDL decades ago. The terrain was barren. There were hardly any trees and dotted with large boulders typically of the Deccan Plateau. I felt as if there was some tremendous energy trapped in these stones. I decided to locate the integration and checkout facilities needed for the missile projects here. For the next 3 years, this became my mission. We drew up a proposal to establish a model high technology research center with very advanced technical facilities like an inertial instrumentation laboratory, full scale environmental and electronic warfare EMI EMC test facilities, a composites production center, high enthalpy facility, and a state of the art missile integration and checkout center. By any standards, this was a gigantic task. An altogether different brand of expertise, grit, and determination were required to realize this project. Goals and objectives had already been decided upon. Now, they had to be shared with a large number of people from various agencies through the problem solving and communication processes that the leader of the team must build and maintain. Who would be the most suitable person to do so? I saw almost all the required leadership qualities in M.V. Suryakanta Rao. Then, as a large number of agencies would participate in the creation of Research Center Imarat RCI, someone had to protect hierarchical sensitivities. I selected Krishna Mohan, who was in his mid-30s, to complement Suryakanta Rao, who was in his late 50s at that time. Krishna Mohan would encourage involvement rather than relying on obedience and monitoring people at their workplaces. According to the established procedure, we approached the Military Engineering Services MES for the RCI construction work. They said it would take 5 years to complete the task. The matter was discussed in depth at the highest level in the Ministry of Defence, and a landmark decision to entrust the responsibility of building defence structures to an outside construction company was taken. He liaised with the Survey of India and the National Remote Sensing Agency for the inspection of the counter maps and for obtaining aerial photographs of the Imarat Kancha to prepare a layout for the approach roads and the location of the facilities. The Central Groundwater Board identified 20 locations amid the rocks to tap water. Infrastructure to provide 40 MVA power and 5 million liters of water per day was planned. It was also at this time that Colonel S.K. Salwan, a mechanical engineer with boundless energy, joined us. In the final phase of construction, Salwan discovered an ancient place of worship among the boulders. It seemed to be that this place was blessed. Now that we had started working on the design of the missile systems and development had already commenced for their integration and checkout, the next logical step was to look for a suitable site for the missile flight trails. SHAR also in Andhra Pradesh, the search for a suitable site spread towards the eastern coastline and finally ended at Balasore in Orissa. A site along the northeastern coast was identified for a national test range. Unfortunately, the entire project ran into rough weather because of the political issues raised around the evacuation of people living in that area. We decided therefore to create an interim infrastructure adjacent to the Proof Experimental Establishment PXE at Chandipur in Balasore district of Orissa. A funding of Rs 30 crores had been given to construct the range called the Interim Test Range ITR. Dr. H.S. Rama Rao and his team did an excellent job of working out innovative and cost-effective specifications for electro-optical tracking instruments, a tracking telescope system, and an instrumentation tracking radar. Lieutenant General R.S. Deswal and Major General K.N. Singh took charge of creating the launch pad and range infrastructure. There was a beautiful bird sanctuary in Chandipur. I asked the engineers to design the test range without disturbing it. Creating the RCI was perhaps the most satisfying experience of my life. Developing this center of excellence of missile technology was akin to the joy of a potter shaping artifacts of lasting beauty from the mundane clay. Defense Minister R. Venkataraman visited DRDL in September 1983 to appraise himself of the activities of IGMDP. He advised us to list all the resources we needed to achieve our goals, overlooking nothing, and then include in the list our own positive imagination and faith. What you imagine is what will transpire. What you believe is what you will achieve, he said. Both Dr. Arunachalam and I saw in the horizon endless possibilities stretching out before IGMDP, and our enthusiasm proved infectious. We were excited and encouraged to see the best professionals in the country gravitating towards IGMDP. Who would not want to associate with the winner? The word had evidently got around that the IGMDP was a born winner.